Hi, everyone, this is the Encyclopedia Channel. This program interprets Poor Charlie's Almanac for you. This book is a compilation of the investment philosophy of financial tycoon Charlie Munger. The book contains his 11 speeches over the past 20 years and various articles he published. It can be called Charlie Munger's Proverbs of Wisdom. So, what kind of investment wisdom does Charlie Munger have? What do you think of Charlie Munger's discussion of multiple thinking models? How to build our own knowledge system? After listening to this episode, we will understand. As a partner of Warren Buffett, some people believe that Munger is actually Buffett's mentor in a sense. Buffett himself said that if there is someone who has influenced him the most on the road of investment, the first person is Benjamin Graham, who is known as the godfather of Wall Street, and the second is Charlie Munger. Charlie Munger and Buffett are partners in Berkshire Hathaway, the most expensive company in the world. In April 2017, its stock price was as high as $250,000. And Charlie Munger is the miracle worker of this super profitable company. On January 1, 1924, Munger was born in Omaha, Central America. However, as a financial giant today, Munger's life has not been smooth sailing. Before the age of 30, he has experienced financial crisis, dropped out of school due to war, divorced and lost children and other difficulties. For many people, going through something like this can be devastating. But Munger was not overwhelmed by the ensuing suffering and misfortune, but in the process, he honed his character and gradually formed his own investment wisdom. During his investment career, Munger has abided by the traditional spirit of the Western United States, doing things well with diligence and focus, being sincere, honest, and kind to people, and saving money to invest in the future, which has won him the trust of many people who are willing to cooperate with him, which gave him the opportunity to experience other investment businesses, and finally earned his first $1 million in real estate business. Afterwards, relying on his keen analysis and thinking, he joined forces with Buffett to acquire businesses such as blue chip stamps, invested in many high-quality companies, and finally built his own financial empire step by step. People who have been in contact with Munger believe that Charlie Munger's thoughts and his methodology, or thinking model, are very valuable. What is the different life wisdom of Charlie Munger? Next, we will focus on the content of this part. First, let's understand what Charlie Munger's most acclaimed multiple thinking model is, and then combine his reverse thinking method to explain how to use these thinking methods to build your own knowledge system. Finally, we will focus on Munger's investment strategy. First part. When many teachers recommended the book Poor Charlie's Almanac, they all mentioned Charlie Munger's multiple thinking model. Munger advocates continuous learning of knowledge from many disciplines to form a complex framework of thinking models. When you only have one tool in your hand, you can only use this tool to work, so Munger said that the most important thing is to keep in mind a series of principles, such as compound interest principle, permutation and combination principle, decision tree theory, misjudgment psychology, and more than 100 models. The combination of them can often bring great power. It's 2, 3, or 4 forces working together in the same direction, and what you get is usually more than the sum of several forces. The reason for constructing this multiple thinking model is that in Charlie Munger's view, the universe is a complex whole, and all human knowledge is an attempt to study this complex whole. There are no clear-cut boundaries between disciplines, but mutual influence. If you look at things with a single mental model, you may distort reality until it fits your mental model, and make stupid mistakes. As Charlie Munger often quotes, "To the man with the hammer, the whole world is a nail." This partly reflects the limitations of single thinking. When we mention multiple thinking, we generally regard it as a methodology, but in essence, it is actually a basic attitude to understand the world. This attitude is inclusive and systematic, which is what Munger said, pluralistic. Why do you say that? Let's explain. The more mature people are, the less they talk about their opinions, but they explain them from different angles. What does no claims, just explanations mean? Faced with a problem, he seldom talks about those provocative views, such as what the government should do, whether you are right or wrong, who is a good person and who is a bad person. He does not discuss or comment on these topics. He is more concerned about whether there are different explanations for a phenomenon, and can we look at it from a different angle? Some people may say, isn't this just empty talk and no practice? On the contrary, caring about what others do is empty talk, and what you interfere with is other people's practice. Concerned about the interpretation of different angles of the world, will be implemented in their own practice. And in the process of going from subjective understanding to objective practice, you should also notice that there is a deep gap between the subjective world and the practical world. There are a lot of absolute principles in the subjective world, but there are only just right actions in the objective world. How to understand this sentence? For example, when we go to a driving school to learn how to drive, we first learn traffic rules and the mechanical principles of cars. These are all things in the subjective world, and you will learn many principles. But once in the car and on the road, principles are of little use. At every moment of driving, do you think it is better to turn the steering wheel to the left or to the right? Neither is right. The practice of driving pays attention to just right, neither left nor right. This is the practice in the objective world. In the practical world, every specific thing is like this, such as writing, handicrafts, playing ball, starting a business, etc. all find the just right dynamic balance point between two contradictory principles. It can be said that every educated young man has already established a subjective world in his mind, and he understands everything. What is the mission of the rest of your life? It is to constantly deal with the inconsistency between the subjective world and the objective world, and to constantly find the just right balance point. Didn't you say that people should be honest? This is the principle of the subjective world. But why in the objective world, sometimes you have to lie, and it doesn't seem to be considered a moral flaw? Didn't you say that the law is the pursuit of justice? Why, in practice, does the legal pursuit of justice count costs? Didn't you say that if you work hard and be kind to others, you will have a bright future? Why am I trying so hard, but still not living well enough? There is a saying that knowing so many truths, but still not being able to live a good life, refers to this phenomenon. This gap between the subjective world and the objective world, we may fall into it every moment. If you can climb out, you will bridge this gap, put the things that are inconsistent with our subjective world into your body, break yourself up, and then rebuild yourself. This process is called growth. Therefore, the faster a person grows and the older he is, the more complex and diverse things he can accommodate in his spiritual world. That's why Charlie Munger repeatedly emphasized multiple thinking models in Poor Charlie's Almanac, and this concept of multiple thinking is the glue between the subjective world and the objective world, and it is the big net that prevents us from falling into the ditch. Why did we say at the beginning that multiple thinking is a basic attitude to understand the world? Why do many mature people have no claims and only talk about explanations? Because more and more interpretations of phenomena can help you grow. As an outsider, it is too easy and too cheap to comment on other people, especially practitioners who do specific things. It is too easy and too cheap. You just take out the concepts and principles that already exist in your subjective world and wave them around. Although you feel good about yourself, it is not good for your own growth and progress. You are actually pointing fingers at other people's practice. To implement it in our own practice, we must maintain an inclusive and diverse perspective, so that more concepts and interpretation angles can coexist in our own spiritual world, and finally nourish our own practice together. At this time, Charlie Munger's multiple thinking model is a good breakthrough. The second part. Having said that, I believe you have already understood the value of multiple thinking models. We have repeatedly emphasized that it is useless to talk about principles, and the key is to implement them in practice. Of course, there are many kinds of practice in daily life. Let's take one thing that is related to all lifelong learners, that is, to build one's own knowledge system. Here, we have to introduce another thinking model, which is reverse thinking. Charlie Munger has a method of thinking about where not to go before thinking about where to go. He called this reverse thinking. This way of thinking about everything in reverse is what we usually call reverse thinking. It is actually a way of thinking commonly used in mathematical proofs, and it is to examine our thinking transferability. Many people may be familiar with reverse thinking when doing math proof questions during school, and may also be familiar with using the method of elimination when doing multiple choice questions in exams, but when facing real life, they may seldom think of this way of thinking about problems. Charlie Munger advocates reverse thinking very much. He believes that for complex systems and human brains, using reverse thinking often makes problems easier to solve. He will generally figure out what not to do before considering the next course of action. Similarly, if we want to build a good knowledge system, it is best to figure out what the bad knowledge system is and then avoid it. In fact, a bad knowledge system has three main characteristics, which are lack of depth, simplification, and loose and unconnected. Let me talk about the first one, the lack of depth. This point is easy to understand. You think, no matter how broad a person's knowledge is, he should at least be relatively in-depth at a certain point. If you know a little bit about everything, but don't understand everything deeply enough, then you will find it difficult to open the channel between phenomena and underlying laws. In this case, our competitiveness in society will be very weak. Let's talk about the second one, simplification. A single knowledge system will result in a narrow vision. For example, everyone has heard of a brand called Munger. This company found a problem when it was managing employees. People who have been in sales for a long time will think that the product sells well, mainly because of sales, while people who have been doing product research and development for a long time will think that the product sells well mainly because of the good quality of the product, and sales are not so important. Obviously, these two views are very one-sided, so the company decided to implement a system of cross-departmental job changes. For example, some personnel have changed from R&D positions to sales positions, and then from sales positions to financial positions. In fact, this is what Munger hopes employees to establish a balanced and comprehensive vision and get rid of a single solution strategy. There is a third, loose and unconnected. In life, we can observe various phenomena, such as phenomenon A and phenomenon B, which may be explained by the same theory. Similarly, theory A and theory B may also have a common underlying framework. Loose and unconnected means that you have not discovered the common ground of these knowledge. Just like randomly piled up clothes, you do not organize them. If things go on like this, it will not only increase your cognitive load, but also easily make you form a loose and messy knowledge system. Now that we know what a bad knowledge system is, let's talk about what a good knowledge system is. In fact, a good knowledge system conforms to such a feature. It looks like the letter T at the macro level, and it looks like the letter Y at the micro level. Why do you say it looks like T in the macroscopic view? In fact, it means that a good knowledge system is in-depth in a certain specialty, but at the same time has a broad vision of multiple disciplines. Isn't this like the letter T? So who can set an example? Or Charlie Munger. This investment guru and Buffett have created the best investment record in history, with an average annual compound rate of return of more than 20%. So how did he do it? Charlie Munger believes that the reason why he achieved such impressive results is precisely because he established his own way of thinking very early, which he called multiple thinking model. Simply put, you must know the important theories of important disciplines, and use them frequently, and use them all, not just a few. We all know that most people only use the mental model of a certain subject they have learned. For example, economics, then he will try to use this method to solve all problems. As the saying goes, if you have a hammer in your hand, the whole world looks like a nail. This is actually a stupid way to deal with the problem. If it is used in the investment field, it is generally difficult to achieve the desired effect. So how did Charlie Munger do it? The secret is still multiple thinking. Munger's approach to investing is nothing like the crude system most investors use. If Munger wants to invest in a company, he will not make a superficial assessment of the company's financial information, but a comprehensive analysis of its internal operating conditions and the overall ecosystem in which the company is located. Doing this requires borrowing and blending analytical tools and methods from various traditional disciplines, including history, psychology, mathematics, engineering, physics, statistics, economics, and more. Why are so many disciplines needed? Munger's answer is, almost every system is affected by multiple factors, so if you want to understand such a system, you must skillfully use multiple thinking from different disciplines. This is what we call a macro T-shaped architecture. Next, let's talk about why it looks like the letter Y at the micro level. For example, if you are doing design, maybe you just use the knowledge of design. The Y-shaped knowledge architecture means that you can't just use a single knowledge, but also incorporate other types of knowledge for use together. For example, design plus cognitive science is a great Y-shaped knowledge framework. If you want to design a poster, think ahead: what information should the audience get first? What kind of emotional response will there be? Does it meet user expectations? Can it arouse their curiosity? Can they know how to act without thinking? Think about it: if a designer understands the laws of human cognition, even if it is only some basic principles, the designed works will be much better than those who do not understand. Therefore, the Y-shaped knowledge architecture emphasizes that at the micro level of application, you need to deliberately combine knowledge from two or more disciplines. Why do you say deliberately? Because for most people, if they do what they are good at, they will fall into routines. If they are not deliberate, it is difficult to add knowledge of other subjects. The above is the second core content of the book, Poor Charlie's Almanack. We all know that in contemporary society, it is very important to build our own knowledge system. So what is a good knowledge system, and how should we build such a system? We borrowed Charlie Munger's reverse thinking method, after analyzing what is a bad knowledge system, and based on Charlie Munger's multiple thinking model, we proposed what is a good knowledge system. He also pointed out that there are 3 steps to build a good knowledge system. First, find the deep knowledge points. Second, establish a multidisciplinary knowledge system. Third, use knowledge in a combined and cross manner. The third part. As a big name in the investment world, what is Munger's investment mentality? In Charlie Munger's view, investment projects can be divided into 3 types. One is the project that can be invested, the other is the project that cannot be invested, and the other is the project that is too difficult to understand. He only invests in investable projects, and does not vote in the other 2. For example, Charlie Munger never invests in the pharmaceutical industry and high-tech industries, because these industries are too difficult to understand in Charlie Munger's view. So how can we evaluate whether a project can be invested? Charlie Munger has 4 screening criteria. Let's take a look together. The first criterion is that the project should be easy to understand, have room for development, and be able to survive in any market environment. Charlie Munger said that you should invest within your circle of competence. If you don't understand a project, don't invest no matter how well others say it. Don't overestimate your scope of competence, and don't blindly follow the crowd. The second criterion is not only to look at the company's financial statements, but also to take into account both internal and external factors. Because the financial statement can at best explain the current value of the company, but not the company's future profitability. The so-called investment is to require the project to make money in the future. Therefore, even if the company's financial statements look good, don't invest lightly. You need to consider many aspects, such as the quality of the company founder, whether the supplier can guarantee the supply, and the inventory situation, etc., all need to be carefully considered. The third criterion depends on whether a company's industry barriers are deep enough and whether the market access requirements are high. The most important competitive advantage of a company is not how much money it makes this year, but whether it can continue to make money in the future. How can we ensure that the company continues to be profitable? Establish industry barriers. If a company has no industry barriers and low barriers to entry, there will be many competitors in the future, and it is hard to say who will have the last laugh. Therefore, whether industry barriers can be established is also an important indicator for examining whether a project is worth investing in. The fourth criterion is that it is better to invest in a large company with a fair stock price than to invest in an ordinary company with a low stock price. Considering that other shareholders may increase capital injection or transfer equity in the future, resulting in dilution of equity and decline in dividends, the value of large enterprises is higher and their returns are more stable. For example, the Washington Post, the government employees' insurance company, and Coca-Cola that he and Buffett invested together are all big companies. Once there is a project that can meet the standards mentioned above, then play for real and make a serious investment. Charlie Munger believes that all smart investing is value investing. You must first evaluate the value of a company, then evaluate the value of the stock, and judge whether you should hold the stock of the company based on the company's competitive advantages. In order to better understand value investing, let's share a short story. Charlie Munger has an investment partner. When he met Charlie Munger, Munger was already an old man who was almost 80 years old, and it stands to reason that his energy and physical strength were not as good as before. The two often meet at about 7:30, which is when they have breakfast. The first time, Munger's partner came almost on foot, only to find that Munger had finished his breakfast and finished reading the day's newspaper. He felt very embarrassed. Although he was not late, he made Old Man Munger wait for so long after all. So, for the second meeting, he was 15 minutes earlier, but still found the old man sitting there reading the newspaper. The third time, he was half an hour early, and when he walked in, he still saw the old man reading a newspaper. For the fourth time, he simply arrived an hour earlier and finally got ahead of Charlie Munger. 15 minutes later, the old man sat down with a stack of newspapers dangling, read the newspapers and ate breakfast by himself, without any unnecessary movements. After reading the newspaper, I looked up at Li Lu and started today's conversation. How would you feel if you met such an old man in your life? You see, he doesn't brag about himself, that's how he lives. He does this all the year round, presenting to the whole world that he is reliable, eager to learn, and respects others. He doesn't need any extra words to make his collaborators respect. After understanding this level, look at the value investing that Munger and Buffett insist on, and you will understand his deep meaning. Value investing is not what it seems on the surface. Buy a stock and hold it for a long time. Value investing is an opportunity for you to give up all speculation and only look at the future of a stock based on its fundamental value. The stock price of a stock is high, and various short-term factors cannot be grasped. And the most important, core, and most reliable factor is that it deserves the price itself. The best way to want something is to make yourself worthy of it. This is one of Charlie Munger's most famous quotes. In fact, many of the truths that Charlie Munger and his Poor Charlie's Almanac talk about can be summed up in this sentence: only by improving yourself can you strengthen your perception of the world, so that your inner abilities can grow and you can match the general trend of the world. This kind of matching degree has been improved. Whether you use it for investment, start a business, or do anything, it will be beneficial to you. This is the end of this episode of the show. What do you think about it differently? Welcome to leave a message to discuss with everyone. Hey, if you like our channel, please subscribe us. Haha, remember to like it.